Okay, this is chapter 15 of The Night Singer. 15. Eric was in the cafeteria when he felt his pocket buzz. He dropped the tea bag into his cup and dug out his phone. It was a message from Cypria asking what he wanted for dinner. They took turns picking up Nyla from school, and making dinner was part of the deal. Dull, he replied, adding a smiling emoji. They ate lentils several times a week, and Eric knew Cypria was sick of them, but he couldn't think of anything else. Both he and his wife were vegetarians, though Nala ate meat at school and showed no interest in shopping. She loved all kinds of sausage, Falurkov in particular. Eric filled his cup with hot water and moved to one side so that a colleague could reach the cups. Maybe, Cypria replied, accompanied by an emoji of a man, something Eric didn't understand. He really should buy her an emoji dictionary. Both he and Cypria enjoyed cooking, though the stress of their jobs took the fun out of it at times. In her job as a dentist, Cypria's hours were more regular than Eric's, but one of her colleagues had just been signed off sick. Right now, however, he suspected there was also another source of stress in her life. Everything ready for Friday? He asked. Her parents were coming to visit from India. They had been over once before to a damp, mushy Malmo, and still talked about that trip, about how cold and awful the weather had been, how they hadn't even seen any proper snow. The weather forecast is talking about rain. Cypria's reply was followed by yet another incomprehensible emoji. Eric took his cup of tea over to the empty table, sending a laughing, crying face with his free hand. Not funny, she replied. He agreed, but he was more worried about her than about the weather, about how she would cope with having her parents so close for 2 whole weeks. They had only stayed a week last time. And perhaps more than anything, she was worried about her. He was worried about what her stress levels would mean for him. Once his tea had finished brewing, Eric fished out the bag, used his spoon to squeeze the liquid out of it, and put it into a napkin. It had been a hectic day, and he needed a moment to wind down before he finished writing up the interview report. He was responsible for the interview with Axel Stanston. Hannah would deal with Rebecca's. He hadn't been there the whole time, after all. When Eric went back inside with the forensics technicians, Rebecca had been alone in the living room, Hannah in the kitchen. The atmosphere had felt much more tense than it had when he'd left, which probably wasn't surprising given the situation. Rebecca had lost a child. Still, there was something about his new colleague that piqued his curiosity, about the fact that he actually found her difficult. Eric usually got along with all kinds of people. There had to be some kind of history there. He was sure of it. He had asked Hannah whether she wanted to grab a coffee, but she had said no. She was going to try to get a hold of Tatjana Eden again. Eric pictured Joel in front of him, a beaten 15-year-old slumped against a wall in the middle of nowhere. No one should have to die like that, and Eric wanted to help Rebecca find out what had happened to Joel. The prospect of something like that happening to Nyla was his worst nightmare. He had been caught up in a similar fear for several minutes when she was born because she wasn't breathing properly. The doctor had tried to reassure him, but it hadn't worked. 2 of his colleagues came into the cafeteria, grabbing coffees and sitting down at the table beside his. You remember that murder and robbery case on Oland? Must be 15 years ago now at least. The one where the woman was beaten up and burned to death in her own house. Yeah, over in Abbey, wasn't it? My aunt lived in the next village. She knew the ex-husband. His daughter works here now. Who's the ex? No, the killers. She joined the force. Eric couldn't help but interrupt. Sorry, what are you talking about? They filled him in on the drunk who had broken into Esther Jensen's house with the intention of robbing her. There were rumors she kept money stashed away at home, and according to Esther's daughter, there had been several earlier break-ins for that very reason. But the rumors weren't true, and when the man realized there wasn't any money, he was furious. He had beaten up Esther and then set fire to the house with her inside. He claimed she had put up a fight and fallen badly, hitting her head and dying. The fire had destroyed much of the evidence, but not her broken bones. She had almost 20 fractures. Who's his daughter? Eric asked, though he already worked it out. Hannah Dunker.